From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. witnessed the grand launch of the Vitro Santa Rosa Data Center, the country's first hyperscale artificial intelligence or AI-powered data center, marking the Philippines' transition to becoming a significant player in the global digital economy. Vitro Santa Rosa or VSR, PLDT's 50-megawatt purpose-built data center is conveniently linked to subsea cable networks interconnecting Asia, the United States, and Europe. The facility was built to meet the cloud and artificial intelligence demands of global technology leaders. He encouraged global innovators to make investment in the Philippines' technological potential. The president emphasized the importance of infrastructure in the digital age, stating that in today's world, data is as critical as water and electricity.
With these efforts of creating a more digitally connected and energy-aware environment, the inauguration of VSR signaled the country's readiness to attract the world's largest technology companies and showcase our regional competitiveness in the digital space. More than that, this technological development is an investment on the future of every Filipino. Our job in the government is to create the conditions for growth. But real progress comes from partnership, from trust, commitment, and a shared vision. And to our visionary investors, I invite you to come to explore the potential of Filipino ingenuity. Bring your technology here. Let us shape the digital economy together with the Filipino being your greatest asset. So as we celebrate this event, let us remember, the bagong Pilipinas we aim to achieve is not just about rebuilding, it is about reimagining and transforming. A nation that embraces digital transformation is a nation that secures inclusive progress.
The chief executive highlighted the Philippines' important digital projects such as the April 2024 launch of the National Fiber Backbone Phase 1 and the extension of the Free Public Internet Access Program, which had over 11 sessions as of March 2025. He also mentioned that the country's position in the Global Innovation Index had improved from 56th in 2023 to 53rd in 2024.
In the Global Innovation Index, out of 133 economies, we rose from 56th place in 2023 to 53rd place in 2024. It is an improvement that reflects our collective effort to accelerate Philippine progress through innovation. But this achievement does not make us complacent, because we need to do more. We must continue to strive for more. And this is why this administration is persistently taking deliberate steps to propel us to even greater heights. In April of 2024, we launched the National Fiber Backbone Project Phase 1. The NFB will deploy fiber optic cable and wireless technology required to enhance internet accessibility and speed nationwide. We aim to complete the entire project by 2028. Through the Free Public Internet Access Program, we have established more free Wi-Fi sites nationwide, with more than 11 million user sessions recorded as of March 2025, including in GIDA areas, or geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. announced that his promise to reduce rice prices to 20 pesos per kilogram is now being fulfilled. This comes after Department of Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. declared that rice would be sold for 20 pesos per kilo in Visayas. President Marcos's closed-door meeting with 12 governors in Visayas resulted in the pilot launch of a 20 pesos per kilo sales program. Under the scheme, disadvantaged Filipinos can purchase rice for 20 pesos per kilogram. Chu Laurel stated that each household will be allocated 10 kilograms by per week for a total of 40 kilograms every month. Chu Laurel added that once logistics issues are resolved, the rice will be sold countrywide for 20 pesos per kilogram. Chu Laurel ascribed the delivered promise of lowering the rice price to 20 pesos per kilogram. Rice prices in the global market are trending lower. To date, the NFA has close to 358,000 metric tons or MT of rice stockpiles, which will last for more than 9 days, more than half of the planned national rice buffer stock of 15 days.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. supports the reviving of steel sector in northern Mindanao in order to accelerate the country's industrialization. President Marcos admitted that local steel manufacturing is critical for any industrialization that his administration intends to pursue. During an assembly with the Regional Development Council of Northern Mindanao, or RDC-10, in Cagayan de Oro City, President Marcos said that discussions with local and foreign groups are underway to revive the National Steel Corporation, or NSC. Members of the RDC are advocating for the redevelopment of the 500-hectare area previously held by the NSC, claiming its ability to generate jobs and restore the city's status as the industrial city of the South. Marcos stated that he would direct the Department of Energy, or DOE, to assess the Agus Pulangi hydropower complexes, or APHC, capabilities to provide the power required to operate a steel mill. The APHC is located in Maramag, Bukidnon, and is made up of 7 run-of-river hydropower facilities with a total installed capacity of around 1,000 megawatts. However, steel manufacturing in Region 10 would necessitate a minimum of 1,500 megawatts of constant power supply. The NSC, once known as the country's largest steel plant and headquartered in Iligan City, fell insolvent and halted operations in November 1999. During a policy discussion in Cagayan de Oro City in November 2024, stakeholders reviewed a concept to develop an integrated steel mill, or ISM, in northern Mindanao with the goal of transforming the region into a steel powerhouse and a top destination for steel industry investors.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang confirmed that Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos will attend Pope Francis's funeral in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. Claire Castro, the Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer, announced to Palace reporters that the first couple would attend the Pontiff's funeral on Saturday. Castro did not specify when the first couple will leave the country for Pope Francis' funeral. The Vatican confirmed on Monday that Pope Francis had died at the age of 88 after a protracted illness. The Vatican said that the late Pontiff's burial will take place on Saturday at 10 in the morning, which is 4 in the afternoon Manila time, at St. Peter's Square. Pope Francis' remains will be transferred to St. Peter's Basilica and subsequently to the Basilica of St. Mary Major for burial. According to a prior Vatican statement, he had a prolonged asthma-like respiratory crisis caused by thrombocytopenia. On March 13, 2013, Pope Francis was chosen Supreme Pontiff, making him the first American Pope and the first Jesuit to hold the office. Before his death, he addressed the audience in St. Peter's Square with a greeting of Happy Easter. In 2015, Pope Francis visited the Philippines, Asia's largest Catholic nation. On Monday, President Marcos paid respect to the late Pope, praising him as the best Pope of his time.
Dateline Malacañang.
In related news, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. ordered a national mourning period for the entire country. This comes after Pope Francis's death. President Marcos issued Proclamation 871 on Wednesday, ordering flags to be flown at half-mast in all government buildings and facilities in the Philippines and abroad, effective immediately until the Pontiff's burial. The President and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos will attend the Pope's funeral, which is scheduled for 10 in the morning, St. Peter's Square, Vatican City on Saturday. Following the liturgy, Pope Francis' remains will be transferred to St. Peter's Basilica and ultimately interred at the Basilica of St. Mary Major. On Monday, the pontiff died at the age of 88 after suffering a stroke and permanent cardiocirculatory collapse. Pope Francis paid a visit to the Philippines in 2015, pulling millions of faithful for one of the greatest papal gatherings in history. President Marcos again described him as the best pope of his lifetime.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is scheduled to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba at the Malacañang Palace in Manila on April 29 to discuss regional and global issues. Malacañang confirmed Ishiba's official visit to the Philippines on April 29 to April 30. On April 29, President Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos will welcome Ishiba and his spouse, Ishiba Yoshiko, to Malacañang Palace. President Marcos had already met with Ishiba in Vientiane, Laos on the fringes of the October 2024 ASEAN summits. According to a recent report by the GG Press, Ishiba hopes to negotiate an agreement with Marcos to begin discussions about forging a military intelligence sharing treaty between Japan and the Philippines known as the General Security of Military Information Agreement, or GSOMIA. Ishiba and President Marcos are also anticipated to agree to start talks on an acquisition and cross-service arrangement that would allow for the mutual supply of ammunition and gasoline. Ishiba will also review a coastline surveillance radar system and other equipment provided under Japan's Official Security Assistance or OSA framework, emphasizing the two countries' quasi-alliance connection. He is also slated to meet with stateless people born to Japanese nationals and raised in the Philippines after World War II to express Tokyo's support for their obtaining Japanese citizenship.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will award the Presidential Medal of Merit to 4 veteran actresses and singers, namely Pilita Corrales, Margarita Flores, Gloria Romero, and national artist Nora Honor. This was confirmed by Presidential Communications Officer PCO Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro on Wednesday. Castro said this step is to recognize their exceptional and huge contribution in the Philippine entertainment industry. The presentation of the awards will be held at the Rizal Ceremonial Hall of Malacañang on May 4, 2025. Nora Honor passed away on April 16. Pilita Corrales on April 12, Margarita Flores on February 11, and Gloria Romero on January 25, all in 2025.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, the Presidential Task Force on Media Security or PTFOMS welcomed the Supreme Court or SC's decision to grant the request to transfer the venue of murder case of slain broadcaster Eduardo Dizon from the Davao City Regional Trial Court or RTC to the Quezon City RTC. PTFOMS Executive Director Undersecretary Jose Torres Jr. said this in a statement. The PTFOMS on March 20 received a copy of the SC 3rd Division's resolution on the case's venue transfer. The SC cited compelling reasons, including threats to the lives of the key witness and the necessity to prevent undue influence, in approving the transfer of Dizon's case to the Quezon City RTC. The PTFOM said the resolution underscores the judiciary's acknowledgement of the serious security risks and integrity concerns associated with the ongoing trial. Dizon, a radio commentator for Brigada News FM in Kidapawan City, was gunned down by two armed suspects near his home in Davao City on the night of July 10, 2019. He sustained 5 gunshot wounds and died on the spot. The PT Farm said Dizon's murder raised significant concerns regarding the safety of the media practitioners in the Philippines. The PT Farm cited that witnesses are receiving threats and concerns about judicial bias have been raised when Dizon's case was filed in the Davao City RTC. It said venue transfer is expected to yield improved outcome in ensuring justice and safety.
Dateline Malacañang.
Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs or SAPEA Secretary Frederick Go is optimistic that Manila and Washington, D.C. would arrive at a mutually beneficial trade arrangements amid a new tariff policy of the U.S. government. This as Go earlier announced that he is heading to the U.S. for a tariff dialogue. However, the date of the official's U.S. trip has yet to be announced. The Department of Trade and Industry, DTI, shared Wednesday that Go and Trade Secretary Maria Cristina Roque met with exporters, producers, manufacturers, consolidators, industry associations, and government officials to assess the possible impacts of the 17% levy for the Philippines under the U.S. reciprocal tariffs and address the concerns of the stakeholders. Currently, the policy on reciprocal tariffs was postponed for 90 days, with U.S. President Donald Trump announcing a universal rate of 10% on April 9. She also reaffirmed DTI's commitment to continue its dialogue with stakeholders and consider their interests in securing the best possible outcomes for the Philippines in its trade relations with the U.S. Meanwhile, the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, or PIDS, has released a discussion paper about the U.S. tariffs written by former DTI Undersecretary Rafaelita Aldaba, which recommended the need to align the country's trade and industrial strategy to secure its position in the shifting global supply chains amid the U.S. tariff policy. Aldaba said, while the Philippines currently benefits from relatively low reciprocal tariffs compared to regional competitors, its narrow export base and limited industrial capacity are holding back the country from taking advantage of the trade diversion opportunities created by the shifting U.S. trade policies. Among the recommendations of the PIDS paper are shifting from low-value assembly to high-tech sectors like artificial intelligence hardware, medical devices, and semiconductors, offering targeted subsidies, performance-based incentives, and streamlined approval processes for firms relocating from high-tariff jurisdictions, digitizing customs and logistics systems to boost manufacturing efficiency, and modernizing economic zones with green energy, 5G connectivity, and smart logistics.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippines is looking to further expand its ties with Indonesia in terms of climate change response. Department of National Defense, or DND Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. made the remark after his meeting with Indonesian Defense Minister Jafri Jamsodin at sa Shangri-La Hotel in Mandaluyong City on Wednesday. In an ambush interview, Teodoro said both nations are facing similar climate change, joint climate change response, and enhancement. The DND chief cited as an example Indonesia's deployment of helicopters that were utilized to help flood victims in Bicol last year. The DND, in a separate statement, said this high-level engagement follows the meeting between Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto during a courtesy call at the Malacañang Palace on September 20, 2024. The visit formed part of Jamsodin's introductory engagement across Asia, which allowed him and Teodoro to exchange views on regional security, maritime cooperation, and bilateral defense initiatives. The two defense chiefs also discussed security developments in the Indo-Pacific region and affirmed their shared interest as archipelagic nations. They acknowledged that this fundamental similarity as neighbors can deepen defense and military cooperation, through sustained interaction and engagement at multiple levels. The meeting also highlighted ongoing and future cooperation under existing defense agreements, including logistics, defense industry collaboration, and personal exchanges. The areas of cooperation explored by the two defense chiefs include the enhancement of joint operations between armed forces in disaster response, training of AFP imams in Indonesia to counter self-radicalization and violent extremism, and the deployment of Filipino medical specialists for the development of military medicine. Teodoro also expressed interest in learning from Indonesia's extensive experience in indigenous defense production, in line with the recently enacted Republic Act 12024, or the Self-Reliant Defense Posture Revitalization Act, designed to establish and bolster the Philippines' defense industry. Both sides look forward to exploring in-depth collaboration beyond bilateral frameworks, including trilateral mechanisms such as the Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines Trilateral Cooperative Arrangement, regional platforms under ASEAN, which the Philippines will chair in 2026, and the United Nations through possible co-deployment in peacemaking or peacekeeping missions. Indonesia is currently one of the observers during this year's ongoing Balikatan exercises 40 to 2025.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, has urged overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, to stay vigilant against loan scams. In a Facebook post on Wednesday, the DMW said it has ramped up efforts to protect OFWs from failing, or rather falling victim to lending financing companies proliferating online in partnership with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. The DMW said these bogus lending schemes are rapidly increasing on social media, particularly Facebook. These scams typically involve fake financing companies that promise quick loans but demand upfront payments only to disappear without releasing any funds. The DMW stressed that legitimate lending companies do not require fees before releasing loans. The SEC, meanwhile, urges the public to verify financial entities through the SEC Check app, downloadable online. Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak assured that the DMW remains steadfast in its commitment to safeguarding the rights and welfare of OFWs and their families left behind, as directed by Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila. Dateline Malacañang.